Okay, folks, I know it is a bit hard to hear that feed from Grant Fredericks, that video analyst from the South Carolina courtroom, but we wanted to give you a little bit of it because it is so important, because he's talking about the video when Sydney and Tammy Moore, who, according to prosecutors, conspired to kidnap Heather Elvis, who disappeared and has never been found, her body never found. They were seen coming and going from the Peachtree boat landing. The Peachtree boat landing, that's the last place where Heather Elvis's cell phone pinged from and where cops found her abandoned vehicle. This is critical evidence. And here to break this all down with me is Joseph Scott Morgan, a frequent guest and analyst here on the Law and Crime Network. Let's talk about the importance of this testimony. Again, I know, folks, it's a bit hard to hear, but bottom line, the prosecutors are theorizing that the black truck seen in that video is Sydney and Tammy.
Yeah, it is a bit difficult to do, Rachel. And again, they're asking the prosecution is they're asking the jury to take a deep and to validate.
Okay, Joseph, it's hard to hear you. Gosh, we're having all sorts of issues here. We can't hear the courtroom. We can't hear Joseph Scott Morgan, but we do have something very interesting. We're going to take a brief break, but when we come back, we have surveillance video photos of Mr. Sydney Moore on the night Heather Elvis disappeared buying a pregnancy test. Very strange. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Okay, welcome back, everybody, to the Law and Crime Network. We are covering the trial of Tammy Moore. She's the woman accused of conspiracy and kidnapping charges, accused with her husband, there she is right there, of kidnapping her husband's girlfriend. And according to prosecutors, what set this off was word that Heather Elvis, the girlfriend, might be pregnant. Here's a really weird thing that happened. The night Heather Elvis disappeared, Cindy Moore, Tammy's husband, was seen purchasing a pregnancy test. This is video you can see from the local Walmart of him doing that. And then he gets a cigar, okay? And about half an hour, no, that was at 1:19 a.m. 1:35 a.m., we have more video. I want to take it to you. It's from a gas station. And there, it's a little bit difficult to see, but you can see him going up to a payphone and making a phone call. That phone call allegedly to Heather Elvis, the woman who disappeared and has never been found. You see there, she disappeared December 18th, 2013. Her body never found. At first, this couple was facing murder charges, but this is such a circumstantial case. Cops just didn't have enough to pin them to the murder. Now they're going after kidnapping charges. Cindy Moore's first trial ended with a hung jury, and now this is Tammy's trial. There they are, the couple, the duo that are accused of plotting this to kidnap Heather Elvis. Joseph Scott Morgan, you're on the line with me. What do you make specifically? We just showed the viewers those two pieces of evidence, the 1:19, him buying the pregnancy test, and the 1:35 a.m., there's the pregnancy test, and the 1:35 a.m. gas station payphone visit.
I've got all kinds of thoughts running through my mind here. If he is attempting to lure her in some way, making a phone call, trying to get her to meet up with him, is he utilizing the pregnancy test once he has her to say, I want to know, maybe I'm just speculating, maybe you've told me that you're pregnant, I want to see, I want to have confirmatory evidence as such. And maybe it was at that critical moment in time that they made a decision that changed her future.
If we buy into the prosecution's theory, whatever was said in that phone call from that payphone that night, for some reason prompted Heather Elvis to go out, to leave her home in the middle of the night and go try to meet up with this guy. Now, she apparently, this is information that has come out in a previous trial, she apparently told her friend and roommate that he told her he left his wife and he wanted to see her and be with her, and he missed her so much. Sydney, when questioned, told a different story, and Sydney told police that he asked her to please leave me alone because she had been leaving notes on our car. A couple of things that prosecutors say. One, he got a new car since they had, stopped seeing each other, so how would she know what car to leave it on? Two, he changed his story. And three, why would that then prompt her to go out and meet him if that's really what happened? This is very mysterious.
Yeah, it really is, and this story is as it's unraveling, or not unraveling, but kind of playing itself out in front of us. I've heard other interesting things too about this woman handcuffing her husband allegedly to the bed to ensure that he's not going to walk out of the door and go,
yes,
as we say down in the South, catting around at night. And
that's
there's
what
a
you
lot
do
of,
to husband instead of
kind of interesting little asides here. Yeah, why would he go to this payphone to initiate this call? And then I want to be able to marry up in my mind from a hard kind of numbers perspective when this call was made and when the last time her phone was pinged at the Peachtree Landing.
Okay, so we know. We know that I was just looking at my notes here. We know that this surveillance footage was from 1:35 a.m. Kathy Russin, who's been following this very carefully, she's our senior trial producer. If you can tell us when the vehicle last pinged, I think that her cell phone last pinged at 3:30 in the morning from that Peachtree Landing boat location where her car was later found. 3:41, Kathy just told me. Okay, so that's 1:35 a.m. He makes that call that you just saw from the payphone, and at 3:41, her cell phone last pings from the Peachtree boat landing parking lot, and then cops find her vehicle, never find Heather Elvis. It's a mystery what happened to this woman. Here's something I want to talk to you about Joseph Scott Morgan. So right now, on the stand, we're not showing it right now because it's a bit hard to hear, honestly, but is a video forensic analyst, and he's talking about this dark truck that was supposedly seen coming and going from this Peachtree Landing area. So I want to show you this picture. This is way up in the corner. Can you see those headlights? That's apparently a photo of the truck that prosecutors are trying to say is Sydney and Tammy Moore's truck leaving or coming from the scene. That's difficult. That's a bit hard to see and make out and confirm that that's actually their vehicle, no?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think that it would be quite easy for the defense to begin to speculate about this and at least implant those seeds of reasonable doubt because it lacks clarity. Look, Rachel, this is not everybody, no one's saying this. Everybody wants to see a body. Okay, yeah. That's what it comes down to. And that's a very tangible thing. Right now, you're having to use electronics to kind of construct this abstract thing and try to paint it in with grainy images, cell phone pings, and all of this sort of thing to go back and begin to, validate, if you will, a charge of kidnapping here.
And remember, Joseph,
that's a tough bit of road.
And remember, Joseph, right now, who's the defendant? It is not that man you see in the surveillance video. It is not that man you saw in the other surveillance video. It is that woman on the screen, Tammy Moore, who so far, I have not seen any hard evidence that she was with her husband that night. Now, the prosecution is trying to paint her as the mastermind. During opening statements, you alluded to this. They said after she found out about this affair with Heather Elvis, she punished her husband. She didn't leave him. She punished him. She took away his cell phone. She locked him, like you said, this is crazy. She locked him to the bed, literally chained him to the bed. So they're saying this type of person, and they called, and I'm quoting the prosecutor here, Joseph Scott Morgan, that they said that she wore the pants in the family, okay? And this is why they're claiming she was connected, because she must have been the mastermind behind this big scheme to kidnap Heather Elvis, who they believed was pregnant with Sydney Moore's child.
Yeah, and I wonder, going back to the pregnancy test here, was it a test not just in the biological sense, but maybe a test in the amorous sense as well? To kind of validate this, did they force this girl to take a pregnancy test at some point in time? He claims that this was for his wife.
Yeah.
I hope that the prosecution will explore this idea that it was for his wife relative to her current physical status or her physical status at that particular time. I think that would be quite compelling and go down that road. But also, if this person is this mastermind, as was stated, what kind of leverage would she be looking for to validate whether or not this young girl was pregnant or not? I think that's very curious.
Yeah, but I am curious too what happened here with this pregnancy test. So if we buy Heather Elvis telling her roommate that that Sydney called me in the middle of the night and said that I left my wife, I want to see you, and he's buying this pregnancy test at the same time, there's rumors she's pregnant, her friends think she's pregnant. Did they force this girl? Did they tie this woman up and force her to take a pregnancy test here that night? And then when they found the results out, they killed her? Is that the prosecution's theory of this?
Well, yeah, I think that maybe that's one part of it. And also
That's
when you
crazy.
think if this husband is kind of the unwitting rube or dupe in all of this, she, again, in this world she's constructed in her mind and is putting forth in reality, maybe she's trying to, say, well, look what you did here, and now there's going to be ultimate punishment that's going to be dished out.
Wow, this is a fascinating case. Like I said, we're live in South Carolina. Not testimony a bit tough to hear. Video analyst on the stand. We're going to take a quick break and hopefully dip into the courtroom when we come back in just a few minutes. Welcome back, everybody, to the Law&Crime Trial Network. And you are not missing a live trial right now. We are told that the Tammy Moore trial just went to break moments ago, which is good because we have a lot to discuss in this fascinating case out of South Carolina, where this woman is facing conspiracy and kidnapping charge for allegedly working with her husband to kidnap her husband's new lover, who they both suspected was pregnant. That there you just saw was Tammy Moore, but the whole last hour was focused around video analysis and focused on, and we're going to show it here, this video. Okay, we're going to show it. This is from this surveillance footage, and it's right near Peachtree Landing. That's a Peachtree boat landing. That's a very important spot because that's where Heather Elvis was last seen or thought to be. Her cell phone pinged from there and her vehicle was found there. Prosecutors allege that it's Tammy and Sydney, the couple, in that vehicle, leaving and coming from the scene. Joseph Scott Morgan's been with me for the last hour. You talked about some of the difficulty as we watched this video determining what exactly we're seeing. I can't tell. It looks like lights in the corner of the screen to me, but I'm not a video analyst. Well,
neither am I, and certainly neither of the people that are in that jury. And so it's hard to kind of grasp this intellectually because it's in the abstract almost. When you begin to look at this thing and you see this black, blurry videography, how does this guy go about it? And that's why they brought him on the stand. He has to talk about things like the timing of this event. And he also has to talk about a very important thing here, Rachel, and that's scale. When you begin to look at this image, and it's kind of convex, you see this thing through this kind of fisheye lens there, and it's disorienting. Okay, as the thing passes by, and the jury is seeing this, how can they actually say that this is this particular truck, and how does it marry up with, say, for instance, a static image or a static visual that you see in real life of this particular type of vehicle? And he has to go some distance to begin to talk about this, the design of the truck, how it marries up, why it has this kind of interesting looking or off-putting kind of view now as opposed to the way it would look in real life, because I'm sure that they're going to flash up images of the actual vehicle and give the jury. And so the jury is going to have to play that through in their mind and say, well, could it actually be the same vehicle? And of course, this opens the door for the defense, because it does, I don't know, just looking at this, it leaves a lot of questions. This is what we do in forensics, though, Rachel. We try to take these kind of it's like chemistry. We can talk about chemistry when you're in high school and all these things, and it's very, very abstract. But you see something that has hard numbers to it that you can apply to it, people can identify with it. It's the same thing with this videography science.
And you got to remember one important thing about this case. Why is the prosecution so focused on this kind of evidence? And that is because there's no DNA evidence in the truck. There's no evidence of a cleaning solution in the truck to prove that somehow Heather Elvis was there. They got very, very little. Either these guys were very, very good criminals, or it's a questionable case for the prosecution.
Yeah, it is. And I'll tell you, one of the points they really need to drive home here is that where her phone last pinged, and that's at this Peachtree Landing. And that's critical. The Peachtree Landing is actually located on the Waccamaw River, which runs through the Waccamaw National Wildlife Refuge. And this is even though it's near Myrtle Beach, I've been to this area, it is desolate.
Yes.
It is a true wildlife refuge, and it has all types of animals, including alligators.
Wow. Okay, so we're going to delve more into this case in just a minute because it's such a fascinating one and there's so much to discuss. But first, here's what's trending in other crime news across America.
Here are today's top crime stories trending on Law&Crime.com and across the country. A New York man is under arrest after authorities reportedly uncovered his plot to blow himself up in Washington, D.C. on Election Day. 56-year-old Paul Rosenfeld allegedly built a 200-pound explosive device in the basement of his home and planned on detonating it on the National Mall to draw attention to the Sortition political belief, which advocates for the random selection of government officials. Rosenfeld is now charged with unlawfully manufacturing a destructive device and interstate transportation and receipt of an explosive. 3 teens in Tennessee will be charged as adults for the brutal killing of an elderly laundromat worker, which was caught on camera. The teens, 15-year-old Javon Brody, 14-year-old Tavares Harrison, and 15-year-old Harrison Smith, reportedly attacked 71-year-old Ted Cook while he worked at a laundromat in Clarksville. Police say the teens only made off with $34 in coins after fatally beating Cook. Now the teens face first-degree murder charges as well as aggravated robbery and theft of property. A man in Oregon was caught on camera trying to grab an officer's service weapon during his trial in a Lincoln County courtroom. 27-year-old Scott Patrick Lemon can be seen quickly standing up and unsuccessfully lunging for the gun of a Newport police officer before being tackled to the ground by another officer. Lemon is on trial for allegedly robbing 2 guests at a beachfront condo in Newport with a fake gun. Lemon now will face additional charges for the scuffle. Those were today's top crime stories. I'm Anthony Velez for Law & Crime.
All right, talk about getting in trouble twice. Joseph Scott Morgan, what do you make there of that last story?
I don't know. They're stupid, and then there's another level of stupid. To try to do this in a courtroom is absolutely amazing. He deserves everything. I don't know what he thought he was going to do with a live weapon. He used a fake one to begin with, so it's kind of a head scratcher.
Wow. Okay, let's turn back to the main trial that we've been focusing here on the Law & Crime Network, and that is the case. South Carolina v. Tammy Moore, okay? She is the woman accused of conspiring with her husband to kidnap her husband's new girlfriend. The husband apparently met this girlfriend, and this is in dispute, by the way. The affair is not in dispute. The two met at the Tilted Kilt, a joint where I guess Heather Elvis, the woman who disappeared, was a waitress server at. They initiated an affair, and then apparently things went south when Tammy Moore found out about it, and now prosecutors believe that she is behind the mastermind, really, of her disappearance. So there's a couple of pieces of evidence we want to talk about because this is a purely circumstantial case. The prosecutors don't have a body in this case. That's why we're not seeing murder charges, although they did attempt that before. And they really don't have any physical evidence. They don't have any eyewitnesses. What they have is basically some surveillance footage. So let's look at one of those pieces of footage. And this is video from the Walmart of Sydney Moore buying a pregnancy test the night that Heather Elvis disappeared. Now, everyone suspected that Heather was pregnant, and the prosecutor said during the opening statements that in the weeks following her breakup from Sydney, she was very, very happy, but she gained weight and that her bra size went up 3 sizes. And so here Sydney Moore is, the night of Heather Elvis's disappearance, buying a pregnancy test. That's weird. He also buys a cigar, by the way. Okay, so then after that, that happened, and we went through this timeline a bit earlier, but it's so important here. And then at 1:35, there's more video footage, and that's from a gas station where, once again, you can see Sydney Moore, the husband of the defendant in this case. Very grainy footage, kind of looks like our trial footage from today. You can see him approaching a phone booth. Who uses phone booths to make calls? That's a bit suspect to begin with, because clearly they have cell phones. And he's calling, we know now, he's calling Heather Elvis, the girl who disappeared. Now, I'm sorry, I want us to go through this timeline because I think it's so important. At 1:44 to between the minutes of 1:44 and 1:46, the night she disappeared, she calls her best friend and tells her best friend, according to testimony from a previous trial, that my old boyfriend just called Sydney Moore and he left his wife and they want to get back, and he wants to get back together. Sydney Moore tells a very, very different story, and that he had called her to get her to stop stalking him, basically, and stop leaving things on his car. What do we make of this, Joseph Scott Morgan? It's a little convoluted, but again, this timeline is kind of crucial because the last time cell phone pinged from her was at 3:30 a.m. at that Peachtree Boat Landing area. Yeah,
they're on the river. I'm thinking about this, and I'm going back to the image that you were showing just a second ago of the phone booth of all things, and I haven't used that term in quite some time.
I can't believe there's still phone. I mean, granted, this is 2013, but still, I didn't even know there's phone booths still around.
I was in London a couple of years ago. There were some there. I'm thinking about this, and I'm wondering, well, why would you use this? And obviously, in my thought, if that is in fact him, I think that it's still kind of a head scratcher. You can't definitively say that is him as far as a positive image goes. But what call
Joseph
was
Scott
made
Morgan,
from
apparently he admitted to police at some point that was him that made the call, but he said he was calling her to try to get her to stop leaving things on his truck. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and why would you use a phone booth, a landline, if you will, in order to facilitate this call? And I can only imagine that it had something to do with probably masking a number. And I'm shocked that he would roll over on that bit of information and tell them that. So yeah, and again, thinking from the perspective of the defense, I think that one of the questions they would ask, or that the comments that they would make, is it's not illegal for someone to go and buy a pregnancy test, as well as a cigar, which is, again, it's kind of a bizarre thing.
And I think that they're going to suggest, my guess is that the pregnancy test was for Tammy. So that will be interesting to see what happens, because we are told that Tammy, the defendant in this case, is going to, her defense attorney said during openings that she is going to take the stand in this.
And that's going to be fascinating.
It's going to be,
because this is this triangular relationship that's going on with this is a truly bizarre dynamic, and it would be really interesting. I'd be nailed to my seat to watch what she would have to say in the course of all of this mess.
I'll be watching. That's what I was just doing right there, studying that Walmart surveillance footage of her buying, of him buying that pregnancy test. Okay, we got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll play you some more testimony from this fascinating trial out of South Carolina. Stay with us. So that is the defense attorney basically trying to poke some holes on whether the footage really came from the time period that this woman claims it came from. Of course, the time period is critical because she's claiming it came from the night that Heather Elvis disappeared. And again, the footage from this woman is even harder to seize than that footage we showed you earlier in the show. Joseph Scott Morgan, what do you make of this?
Wow, brave new world, huh? We've got social media coming into play here. She was aware of the case by virtue of things that she had seen on the internet. And again, if you're thinking about validation of this video, maybe it's not just one individual piece, but the sum total of everything as it comes together. And yeah, it's grainy and it's hard to see. But, you know, it all depends on how the prosecution is able to this kind of, I don't know, you know, basket of bits of evidence together. Is it going to be compelling enough to get past reasonable doubt in the minds of the jury members? Are they going to be willing, if you will, to put someone away for a protracted period of time based upon grainy videography?
Yeah, it's certainly very, very interesting to follow this case, and especially if Tammy Moore takes a stand herself, because, you know, the prosecution doesn't have a lot to go and say, hey, but isn't this you? Of course she can deny that wasn't her in that surveillance footage. And you know, that video we showed earlier, that was of her husband at the Walmart. So there's really nothing, as far as I'm able to see, and there's the footage again of him again buying that pregnancy test, that directly links, and help me out here, Joseph Scott Morgan, maybe I've missed something, that directly links Tammy to this. It makes sense based on some of the text messaging going back and forth, her anger about finding out her husband was having an affair, and then finding out that Heather Elvis might be pregnant with her husband's kid. Sure, all that motive, I buy it, but then what? Where's the evidence?
Yeah, exactly. And is it going to be compelling enough when those 12 people are back there in that room together, you know, to be able to tie all of these strands together, Rachel? You know, I think that I've never been on a jury by virtue of what I've done for a living all of my life. And, you know, I've always been interested in, you know, seeing the end product of what is it like to actually be in that jury room to debate these things. And they're going to have to make a decision in there based upon the sum total, as I mentioned, of this evidence. And again, you know, it's my area of expertise. We're absent a body here. We're absent a person. We see these still images of her. We hear people talk about her and all of these sorts of things, but we still don't have the person. And I think at the end of the day, people are going to want to see this. And if you're talking about kidnapping, okay, let's just talk about kidnapping. What you're stating in saying that and making that charge is that you literally had possession of this person, that you were holding
against
them
the
against
person's
their
will. Yeah.
And that's a big part of this, Rachel. And I think that that's a real uphill battle for the prosecution.
Yeah, this is going to be a very, very, very tough case. The case against her husband, Sidney Moore, ended up in a hung jury. It was a mistrial. So we have got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll take you back inside South Carolina in that courtroom for more testimony in the Tammy Moore trial. Stay with us. Okay, so clearly she's not able to tell who's inside the car, and this is some of the key evidence the prosecution claims to have against this couple. Joseph Scott Morgan, you've been with me for the last hour and a half now. We're listening to more of Joyce Ayland. What do you make of it?
Well, she seems kind of in control. I'm assuming the defense is prepared to. They were prepared to cross her, but she's, for someone that doesn't get on the stand very regularly, she seems very comfortable there, I have to admit. So, I don't know. This might turn out to be a strong witness for the prosecution, but again, she's not the expert here. Remember, our expert was testifying today, the videography expert, and she is essentially just providing this video. So I think that maybe she is going down a road that she might not ought to go down. Sometimes less is more. As far as overstating facts that can't be confirmed. She has no idea where the car was headed, where it was coming from, that sort of thing, and she certainly doesn't know who the occupants were.
Of course not. And again, she's not supposed to. She's just the woman who had the surveillance footage that the police are using in this case. But again, they don't have a ton to go on, so all these details matter. Okay, let's take a quick break. Joseph Scott Morgan's going to stick around with me, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. And welcome back, everybody, to the Law&Crime Trial Network. A lot going on. We're going to take you back to that case in South Carolina in just a moment. But first, other stories trending across America.
Here are today's top crime stories trending on Law&Crime.com and across the country. A New York man is under arrest after authorities reportedly uncovered his plot to blow himself up in Washington, D.C. on Election Day. 56-year-old Paul Rosenfeld allegedly built a 200-pound explosive device in the basement of his home and planned on detonating it on the National Mall to draw attention to the Sortition political belief, which advocates for the random selection of government officials. Rosenfeld is now charged with unlawfully manufacturing a destructive device and interstate transportation and receipt of an explosive. 3 teens in Tennessee will be charged as adults for the brutal killing of an elderly laundromat worker, which was caught on camera. The teens, 15-year-old Javon Brody, 14-year-old Tavares Harrison, and 15-year-old Harrison Smith, reportedly attacked 71-year-old Ted Cook while he worked at a laundromat in Clarksville. Police say the teens only made off with $34 in coins after fatally beating Cook. Now the teens face first-degree murder charges as well as aggravated robbery and theft of property. A man in Oregon was caught on camera trying to grab an officer's service weapon during his trial in a Lincoln County courtroom. 27-year-old Scott Patrick Lemon can be seen quickly standing up and unsuccessfully lunging for the gun of a Newport police officer before being tackled to the ground by another officer. Lemon is on trial for allegedly robbing 2 guests at a beachfront condo in Newport with a fake gun. Lemon now will face additional charges for the scuffle. Those were today's top crime stories. I'm Anthony Velez for Law & Crime.
Yikes, that guy just, I guess, wasn't having a very good day to think that it would be okay to just, try to get in a little scuffle like that with right in the middle of court there, Joseph Scott Morgan.
Yeah, it's horrible stuff. Not to be too much of a downer, but a few years ago we had a shooting in Atlanta in the courthouse. People think that courthouses are very safe, protective environments. They can be very dangerous like this. People's lives are on the line. They get panicked, that sort of thing. So, dangerous situation indeed.
And this guy actually tried to grab an officer's gun, and you saw it right there. Very crazy, but you're right. Emotions are very high in courtrooms, and it can often be a spot where outbursts happen, and some scary things can happen. Let's turn now to that case that we're following out of South Carolina. That is the case against Tammy Moore. She's facing kidnapping charges for allegedly conspiring with her husband to kidnap her husband's new lover, who they both suspected was pregnant with the husband's baby. Okay, so part of the state's case it's all circumstantial evidence. And the important part of the case is that they have a lot of surveillance footage that they claim links this couple to the scene where Heather Elvis was last seen. We pulled it up. Here you can see this is the dark, grainy footage from the night that Heather Elvis was last traced. It's hard to tell, but prosecutors are claiming that this is Tammy Moore and her husband Sidney Moore's black truck from that evening. This is footage from a guy by the name of David Quant, and he testified for the prosecution. So let's listen to some of his testimony right now. Okay, so it kind of seems like the defense is trying to get this guy to admit that perhaps there are many other trucks in the area and that there's no way to really directly link this couple to the scene where Heather Elvis was last seen. I have to say goodbye to my good friend Joseph Scott Morgan, who has been with me now for the last 2 hours as we watch this fascinating case. It's always lovely to have you on the Law and Crime Network, Joseph.
It's always a joy to be with you guys as well. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity.
Well, we'll definitely have you back again, as always. In the meantime, I want to let you folks know a quick little programming note. We have a very special new show for you here on the Law and Crime Network. Our very own Aaron Keller, you see him there with that lovely smile. He hosts the Daily Debrief, and it airs daily at 5 o'clock every evening. He basically recaps and summarizes the highlights of all of the trials we're covering and any other crime cases going on across the country, so you're definitely going to want to catch that. In the meantime, we're going to continue to monitor this case out of South Carolina. We'll take you back inside the courtroom as soon as we get our feed in. In the meantime, stay with us here on the Law and Crime Network.